I don't know, we're getting an echo here. I don't know what that's from. But and okay, there, I've got the agenda now. I was having trouble. Okay, let's call this meeting to order. We have a quorum.
Yes, we have a quorum.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Emily, you wanna, I can't bring up my agenda, so I'm gonna hand it over to you to, okay, there it is. Okay, beautiful. First item on the agenda is hearing of the public. Do we have any public that wants to be heard at this time? Okay, hearing no public, we'll move on to the annual election of the chair and vice chair. I'll turn that over to Emily.
All right, so our first chairs from last year were Mayor Dave Mitchell and the vice chair was Leanne Parmenter. Does anyone want to make a nomination for 2021 chair and vice chair?
I'll nominate Mayor David Mitchell for chair and Leanne Parmenter for vice chair.
I'll second. This is Honey.
All right, any other nominations? All right, hearing none. Do I have a motion to approve Mayor David Mitchell as the chair and Leanne Parmenter for the vice chair for 2021?
Where's Matt? Matt.
I'll make the motion.
I'm Bill Kuhn. I'll second it.
Thank you. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so let's move on with the agenda.
Okay, Emily, thank you to the group for the confidence. And I know we'll move forward in a very positive way this year. We have a great group to work with. So we can now move into your discussions. If you need some help, you know, having the technical difficulties this morning, we'll work through that. So the first item on the agenda is the annual obligation. So Emily.
If everyone can hear me, I just wanted to touch on our annual obligation report. This is something that MPO creates every year to show all federally funded projects in the past fiscal year. So this is publicly available on the website. So in fiscal year 2020, the Erie MPO received over $17 million in federal funds for highway and bridge projects and over $10 million for transit projects. So if you have any questions or concerns, you can refer to this report. And if anyone has any questions about the report, I can take them now if anyone has any pressing concerns with last year's federal fiscal report. All right, well, hearing none, I hope I am hearing this correctly, but I'm not hearing any questions. So we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the COVID relief funding update from Kevin Mcclellan.
Let me get unmuted there. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, great. Excellent, excellent. Okay. I just kind of move this out of the way here. I'm just playing with my screen here a little bit, just getting a couple things out of the way here. I got too many things opened up here. Okay. All right. I'm going to just go over basically three components of where we are with funding on both the federal level and at the state level. So I'm just going to talk through a few things. I want to just kind of talk about federal funding, and then I'll talk a little bit about the COVID relief funding, and then I'll give you an update on the Penndot Pathways initiative. So with that, we'll get started here. And I guess I'll, if you have any questions, we'll just kind of hold off till the end. If there's something that's, jumps out at you or I'm not clear, then, I'll be able to answer any questions you may have. So currently, let's start with federal funding. Currently, we are in a one-year extension of the FAST Act. That was approved, and that it expires September 2021. So as of right now, we are in an extension that'll take us through the end of the federal fiscal year, which ends September 30th. And then the new federal fiscal year 2022, of course, will start October 1st, 2021. Typically, the Highway Trust Fund at the federal level, we typically, up until about 10 years ago, we were a pay-as-you-go system. So whatever money went into the trust fund was distributed. There was no general fund money involved with that. But unfortunately, we began to accept general fund transfers into that Highway Trust Fund account. So in order to keep the Highway Trust Fund solvent through the end of this federal fiscal year, there was approximately $13.6 billion in money transferred from the general fund into the Highway Trust Fund, and about a little over 10 billion of that was highway account, and about 3.2 billion was into the mass transit account. So that should maintain solvency through the end of this particular federal fiscal year. So we'll see what happens with regards to a new authorization bill. We have a new administration in place, and there's a lot of talk out there about infrastructure. So we'll see where that leads us. So stay tuned. We'll try to provide updates here, but also keep your eye in the paper and keep your eye on the news. I'm sure this is going to be a pretty hot topic moving into the spring here, particularly with the FAST Act expiring in September. So hopefully we don't get into too many extensions. That seems to be a habit of legislature lately, that we tend to extend things a little bit. We get a little crazy on the extensions, unfortunately. So look for more information on that, and we'll provide updates on that as we get them. On the federal COVID relief funding part, there was a federal COVID relief bill that was passed in December. And we have found out that includes roughly about $407 million in COVID relief funding for highway infrastructure programs in Pennsylvania. There is some loosening on the eligibility on some of these federal funds. As you know, when we typically talk TIP development and talk about projects, federal funds have specific eligibility requirements, whether they be air quality or safety, or they have to be on the NHS system, those types of things. They have loosened the requirements significantly, and that's great because we can use it for routine maintenance and some debt service payments, covering our revenue losses that we've had over the past roughly a year. However, with that, we have to await guidance from USDOT and FHWA for more details. There's a lot of questions that brings, so we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. So at the federal level, they're in the process of coordinating some FAQs and things like that as far as how we can utilize these funds. If you remember, just a month or two ago, we were talking in Pennsylvania about possibly taking a bond out for up to $600 million to cover the losses at Penndot due to the reduced gas tax revenue. That figure was later reduced to a little bit under, I think it was around $470 million. Since this COVID relief closes that gap significantly, within about $60 million, there are no plans right now to go for that bond debt. And so that should be a moot issue as far as right now goes. So there's no need to continue that request for that bonding authority. So we're hoping we don't have to go there or bring that up again, but But this does substantially close that gap. So so not that things are great, but we've been able to make up most of that gap. So that's great. So the important thing to remember is that this is relief funding. It's not stimulus funding. So we're not looking to add projects to the program. This will basically get projects that we have deferred and delayed in the letting schedule and get things moving again, so to speak. So anything that was in the program, we can continue to deliver. So as you know, the tip is those are funds we expect to receive both on the federal and the state level. On the federal side, we have received those funds, but obviously on the state side of things, the anticipated revenues coming in have been lower. So our plan is to cover as much of those as possible in the tips so that we can get things back moving again. So anything that wasn't delivered, in the previous federal fiscal year, we can get up to speed on that. So one thing you'll have noticed is that we have deferred some lettings. We have really let up on the lettings as we've looked at our cash flow. So as this 407 million gets into our coffers, so to speak, and we're able to figure out how to apply it, we're hoping to get things back up and running again here. So the intent is to get us back on schedule as much as possible. There's still some reduced cash flow coming in. Obviously, we are not a completely open economy, particularly in Pennsylvania, and I know a lot of other states are like that too. So we're looking at cash flow, but the impacts, once this 407 million get in there will be some impacts, but thank goodness this will allow us to deliver most of the tip, which we couldn't say that prior to this passing. So with that, I'll turn from the COVID relief funding and finish up and talk a little bit about Penndot Pathways. If you remember, this initiative began back in November 2020. And basically the idea was to study and look at implementing alternative funding solutions that could address like long-term highway, bridge, and multimodal needs. As you'll remember, Act 89, the recent gas tax, I call it recent. It seems recent to me, but believe it or not, it was almost 8 years ago when we passed Act 89 and we increased revenue generation off of fuel taxes and things like that with regards to the gas tax. But we've been looking at this for a while here. This isn't just because of COVID. This is something that we're looking at potential funding options, ongoing ways that we can, generate more funding. We definitely have issues, particularly when it comes to some of our larger bridges. So one of the things that has been talked about is a major bridge P3 initiative where we are considering tolling a number of large bridges around the state, and then use that money directly to invest in those specific bridges to improve those bridges. So these are large structures, and we're trying to geographically look at these across the entire state, so no one area is impacted, significantly more than other areas. There's been a little bit in the news on this, and I guess the bottom line is that tomorrow at 11 a.m. there's going to be a talk about the study and talk about more details with regards to identifying these near and long-term funding solutions. So they're going to be doing a presentation tomorrow at 11. I'm assuming it's going to be recorded, so it should be available at a later date also. But if you can make the 11 o'clock meeting tomorrow, I know we are inviting all the MPO and RPO board and committee members to attend that. So if you are available tomorrow at 11 o'clock, that would be great. A link will be provided to all those members. If it hasn't been provided already, we'll make sure that Emily has that information so that she can provide that. So again, I guess as we move forward, we'll continue to share updates and any future conference calls or engagement opportunities where we invite the MPOs and RPOs to participate in the discussion as we move forward on some of these initiatives. So with that, I know I covered a lot of information there. Are there any questions on anything that I talked about? Okay, great. And if you have any questions, please, let Emily know and get that back to me. I know Brian McNulty and I, we stand ready to answer any questions you might have. So anything that you need, any questions, but we'll get that link out to all the MPO and RPO committee members and make sure that you have that. So if you can participate tomorrow, I would encourage you to do that. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, Emily.
Next up on the agenda are the physical constraint charts from Brendan Leach. Brendan,
All right.
can you hear us? Okay.
Thank you, Emily. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes. I
The
can.
thumbs up. All right.
Yes.
Okay, so just to review the the tip adjustments for the last couple months, we had a total of 6 administrative modifications. 2 of those required CPDM approval. So I'll just, Emily, if you want to flip to the next slide, just to cover that one. I'll just kind of review that one. It was a low bid construction cost increase to the US 6N and SR 99 intersection project. $1,078,623 in federal STP funds and $75,601 in federal HSIP funds were added to federal fiscal year 2021. The Erie Highway Bridge line item and available deobligations were used as funding sources, and the CPDM item was approved on January 11th of this year. And the CPDM item is also included in the meeting materials for your reference. In addition, there was also an informational item that was done through the statewide tip. It was a movement of funds on the Central Bayfront project. I think she has it pulled up there. From the construction phase in federal fiscal year 2023 to the final design phase in federal fiscal year 2021. This was done to cover a work order, and the Transportation Infrastructure Investment Fund, the TIF reserve, was used as the balancing source. So with that being said, were there any questions with the fiscal constraint charts and TIP adjustments? All right, that's all I had then, Emily.
Thank you, Brendan. Yes, and this is the CPDM item. Brendan, for everyone who might not know, what does CPDM mean?
Oh, so the CPDM stands for the Center for Program Development and Management. So these items that require approval, the district will send in these items, and then we review them in central office and get approval from the program center to make these projects happen. And then what we do basically from there, once it does receive approval, it goes back to the planning partner to ask if they would want to vote on it. And this one went through, as far as the input I got, there was no controversy or any thought that there was a necessity to vote on this one. So it has already been approved.
Thank you, Brandon. So basically, this is over $1 million change, but it's under our MPO $2 million threshold for a vote. So it's over the CPBM threshold, so it needs approval by a central office, but not necessarily an MPO vote because it's under the $2 million. But this is still quite a large change. So that's why this information is in here for this project. So does anyone have any questions about that? I think Brandon covered it very well.
Okay, I think we can move on.
All right, sounds good. All right, the next item on the list is the local use fee bridges. So, John, would you like to present this? John Tushak?
Before, John, before you present it, I want to thank you for volunteering to be chair of the local use committee. We appreciate you stepping up and volunteering.
You're on mute there, John.
Sorry, I was muted. You're welcome for the thanks there, Mayor Mitchell. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm John Tushak. I'm the city engineer for the city of Erie. And just last week, the $5 local use fee subcommittee didn't have a chair, so I volunteered to do that, and I'll go through this with everyone. Up on the screen, well, last Wednesday, the committee met to discuss what the latest allocation of the $5 local use funds, how they would be used. And up on the screen is the current ranking of the three worst bridges, three worst local bridges. Conquah Avenue was maybe middle of the pack prior to this year, but it's unbelievable the rapid deterioration that's happened over that bridge in the last year. And it's kind of precarious right now. The city was getting letters from the Erie Yacht Club and others at the bottom of the hill. The situation down there is that the Erie Yacht Club, maybe over 1,200 members, and there's a Ferncliff residential development down there with 20 plus units. And those are all landlocked pretty much. Ravine Drive is the only access to those properties. So if this bridge, anything would happen to this bridge, the road would close and
This is he speaking.
pardon me?
It went okay.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
I'm getting a little, okay, well, sorry, let me continue. So those properties would be landlocked if, and with no access if anything would happen to that bridge. So we've been monitoring the bridge, and we also called in a third-party structural engineer to watch the bridge as well for any imminent danger. Right now, we can leave the bridge open for the moment, but we don't know day by day what may or may not happen with this bridge. So the bridge has moved to the top of the list as far as condition. And the second bridge is Himrod Road in Waterford Township, and the third bridge is Sherrod Hill Bridge in Elk Creek Township. So I would recommend to the committee that we have 3 separate votes to approve that funds be allocated to these bridges. Does anybody have any questions before I go to the voting?
Bill Kuhn, on the Kakwa Bridge, how big is that? I mean, size-wise?
It's a concrete arch that's 100 years old, and it spans, I believe, about 50 feet, single span.
Okay, what my question is, I thought the local use fees were for bridges that were smaller, 20 foot or smaller.
I believe
correct in that?
they're for 20 feet or larger. Is that correct, Emily?
Yes, it is 20 feet or larger at the moment because we have the inspection data to be able to rank these bridges by condition. In theory, in the future, we could use it for 8 and above, but for right now, the ranking system is 21 feet or greater, so over 20 feet that are normally inspected, but locally owned bridges that are in poor condition or structurally deficient are ranked by ADT, detour, and condition. And these are the top 3 that the subcommittee talked about at our meeting last week. So it is the regularly inspected bridges that are locally owned.
Okay, John, I'll take over the 3 separate votes on this. We had an extensive conversation in the local use fee committee last week, and this is a very impactful project that is an emergency project that we need to give the city the chance to get that. We can't afford to have that much impact. Even next summer would be critical. So is there any other questions on the Kakwa Avenue Bridge? We'll bring it to a motion and a vote. Okay, do we have a motion to approve that project? Or pass it on to the MPO?
This is Matt Waldinger. I'll make that motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Bill Kuhn, yes.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, it's been duly moved and seconded. Everyone who approves, say aye.
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 Are there any nay votes?
Mr. Mitchell, Mayor Mitchell, do we need to
Yes.
get into the bit about the feasibility study and the roadway preceding the construction of the bridge? So everyone understands that.
Okay, this project has a little bit of a wrinkle, and we really should bring that up. You're right, John. It's one of those situations where you can, like many of our rural roads, where you can't close the road down totally forever because you're denying residential access and also commercial access. So they will have to forge a road beside the construction area of the bridge, much like we do on the rural roads. This this road will probably not be taken out after the bridge project because actually it will be an improvement to access to the total area. And there are going to be, as the city of engineer or Erie moves through the engineering, there are going to be a couple options on that particular bridge, whether maybe even, I think, John, if I'm right, rebuilding the bridge as a vehicle bridge, we could go to a pedestrian bridge.
Yeah, would you like me to speak to that for a minute?
Yeah, just for a minute, please.
Okay, the feasibility, we're looking at doing a feasibility study similar to the McBride Viaduct because the course of action on this one isn't crystal clear. And a lot of bridges you come in and you replace the bridge, and that's crystal clear. On this bridge, there could be as many as 7 options that I can think of that would be a potential solution or potential fix. So we propose to do a feasibility study before the funds are committed to just simply reconstructing or the bridge. And these options include total removal or rehabilitation or removal or replacement with a vehicular bridge, replacement with a ped bridge, because traffic counts are low there and there's a lot of pedestrians in the area that once we go to a public input phase of this thing, we might find that the most of these uses are going to be pedestrian. And then there's a few detour routes that could be considered. So there could be as many as 7 options, maybe more. So we feel it's prudent with these funds to do a feasibility study before we would just simply sink funds into a bridge that may or may not be needed. So that's the course of action we propose. And we have an estimate for about $75,000 to do this feasibility study. That way, if the bridge is found to be unnecessary, it turns into a demolition project and we spend far less funds to remedy the situation. And that being said, with this, every one of the 7 options would require a bypass road during the construction or demolition, because we can't shut that road down for more than an hour or people are going to be screaming. So the proposal is to build the access road immediately. So if the bridge needs to be closed at any time, access is not denied. And then while the feasibility study is underway, the bypass road is available if needed, and then the bypass road is available during construction as well, once the results of the study are determined.
We had a long conversation about this project on the local use committee, and 2 things. Number one, of course, is the emergency situation that if an engineer came back tomorrow and said, you have to close this down, it presents a huge problem. So we wanted to give the city of Erie time to get the scenarios that John just talked about. We also went into discussion about use of the local use fee and the restrictions, et cetera. And we vetted it pretty well with Penndot. And we find that this would work into the parameters that we can work within the local use fee fund. And also Erie is going to invest money in this project also. So we as a local use committee felt that this was a very important project to the region. So is there any other discussion? Hearing no other discussion, I will call the question for moving this to the MPO. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone on a negative? Okay, motion is passed. I think the next motion would be the Waterford Township, the Hemard Road Bridge. Do we have a motion to approve that project?
If we need to discuss that as well, I can also add that the dollar amount for that bridge would be $539,600 assigned. And that's, Emily, that's for a reconstruction?
That is yes.
I think we've talked about that bridge before. I think that was on the list from prior.
It was a bridge that, like Conqua, was lower on the bridge, but due to a recent deterioration of the bridge, moved up. So it is number 2 on the condition ranking, and then with the ADT and detour, it is number 6 for a combined ranking of 8. So it puts it in the second place on the prioritization list for Waterford Township.
Okay, let's get a motion on the floor in a second, and then if there's any other discussion, we'll do it. Do we have a motion to approve this for passing it along to the MPO?
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Second, this is Honey.
Who was it?
Honey Stemka.
Okay, Honey seconded. Okay, now we'll open it for any other further discussion. This has been discussed before. I think a year ago, there was some discussion on this particular project. And again, the local use committee discussed it thoroughly and recommended moving it on. If there are no questions, then we will call for the vote.
Excuse me, Mayor,
Yes. Yes,
I
Brian.
have one question. So these three are all, there's enough funds in the $5 use fee coffers at this point to fund all three of these bridges? Is that how the committee kind of chose them?
Okay, Emily, you want to answer that question?
Yes, that is how these were chosen.
Well,
bring
I-
up-
I didn't catch any of that, but I wasn't asking really how they were selected. I was just asking is this a fiscally constrained request? In other words, is there, enough money now or will be in the $5 use fee area to cover all three of these bridges?
Yes, so as of December of 2020, Erie County received both allocations for 2020. So we have $1.2 million in the account that is not allocated to any project. So these three total should be right now 1,800,000 right now, or no, just over 1 million, so $1,008,000. There is a question about Conqua Ave because we don't have the fund number right now for the road. So the access road still needs a cost estimate to it, unless John has been creating that very quickly here. It still needs a cost estimate, but we should have $200,000 still in the account for the access road.
I'm comfortable saying the access road would be less than 200,000. Although I don't have the specific route of it yet, and I have a kind of a preferred route, but I'm looking at a second route. And I'm comfortable saying if I go with that preferred route, it would be under 200,000.
Okay, thanks for the
So that
explanation.
would mean that, well, we're fiscally constrained for the two bridges 2 and 3 and the access road and the feasibility study, if that's correct. And then down the road, we might look at future funds for whatever the preferred alternative becomes for the bridge replacement, but that can come later. The immediate need for us right now is to deal with the safety down there, and if the bypass road, the feasibility study, so we know what course of action to take.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, we had discussed that in our local use committee meeting, and I think we are within our fiscal restraints. And the Conqua project is multi-layered, so we can always deal with some of the other costs later on as the local use bridge fee pot grows. So any other questions on the Himrod Road Bridge? Did we vote that one in?
I
No,
think we had a first and a second, but we
Yeah,
didn't
we had the
vote yet.
first and second. Okay, I'll call for the vote. All
Aye.
those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, we'll move that on to the MPO. And the third one is the Elk Creek Township Sherrod Hill project. Let's put a motion on the floor and then discuss it.
Bill Kuhn, I'll make the motion.
Okay, Bill makes a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so now we will discuss the bridge project at Elk Creek.
Okay, well, the total cost on that one's 473,000. And it's number 3 in condition priority. At ADT and detour rank is number 9. Is that also a replacement, Emily?
This is replacement. This bridge was our next priority on the previous list 2 years ago. There are Caldwell Ave and Henry Road did jump above it because their condition deteriorated so rapidly. But Sherrod Hill has been structurally deficient for quite a long time, and Elk Creek has been doing some patchwork repairs to make sure that it can stay open. Actually, I do believe Elk Creek did join the meeting. I don't know if you guys would like to say anything on behalf of this bridge or what's going on with Sherrod Hill Road Bridge from the township's perspective.
Okay, any questions on?
Can you hear?
Bob, is that you? I can't go to Elk Creek.
Yeah, this is Bob Soltis out of Elk Creek Township. Yes, we have been forced to do some stopgap measures on wing walls and a few other things while we've been waiting, Emily. So anything we can come up with, we appreciate greatly.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye to move it on.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. And I appreciate John taking the chairmanship of the local use. This is going to be a very important committee for us in Erie County as we move forward. So thank you so much. Okay, Emily, we can move on.
Well, one more thing from
Okay.
the $5 local use fee subcommittee. If we can ask that can we move the coordinating committee vote, at least for Cockwell Road, to e-ballot so that we can proceed more quickly?
I think that's a reasonable request. We had discussed that because of the time sensitivity and the MPO meeting being a month away, and the city of Erie would like to start on the engineering and getting this project underway. We have done these e-votes before. So I think that, do we have a motion? Emily, this is proper in your bailiwick, right?
It is. Normally for email ballots for the coordinating committee, I do check with Tim May, who is the chairman of our coordinating committee. I don't think he joined today on this meeting. But I don't think it would be a problem to go ahead and do an e-ballot. I will call Tim after this meeting to make sure it's okay with him, but I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be. So I guess if we could have a motion, and then I will make sure it's valid, but.
Okay, we'll have a motion that we will move this to an e-vote, depending on Emily's input back on how we do this. Is there someone that's comfortable making that motion?
This is
Well, I'll
Matt
make-
Waldinger. I will make the motion, but I'd like to put a condition on it that, this is a little more complex than a straight yes or no vote, just because of all of the variables going on with the road. So I'd like to make sure that the coordinating committee gets all of those details, whether that's through the initial email or there's a Word document or something attached, just to explain how the funding is going to be used with the study and everything.
Yeah, this is an unusual situation. You're right, Matt. And I think Emily can send out the information, and if anyone has particular questions, they can call Emily and she can explain it to them in detail. I mean, I think when we send the vote out, we'll have some detail in it, but also that people before they vote can come back and get more information before they vote. Kind of like a meeting situation where people are going to ask questions before they cast their vote. I'm comfortable with that. Is there a second to Matt's motion?
Bill Kuhn, I'll second it.
Thank you, Bill. And is there any other questions before we call the motion? We've done the e-votes before, so, but this one came up fast and it does have to be dealt with. So we do appreciate the work of the committee here. I'll call for the motion vote. All those in favor say aye.
Well, one question for
Yes.
clarity. Is it just for the Cockware Road or for all three we're doing the e-vote?
I would say to keep it, well, let's discuss that for a moment. Emily, what are you comfortable with?
Either way is okay with me. I know the Causeway is the one that is really pressing right now. Our next coordinating meeting is March.
Yeah, we can hardly hear you, Emily.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, kind of pace it a little bit slower.
Our next coordinating committee meeting is March 10th. We can vote then in March. The e-ballots do require 1 week before any vote is official. So for Cockware Ave, the soonest we could have a vote would be next Wednesday. So March 10th is only 3 more weeks past next Wednesday. So it's not that long of a wait. So I think Cockware Ave should be the only bridge for the e-ballot vote.
Okay. Having said, is everyone comfortable with that? Okay, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposition? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you very much.
All right, so next up is Tom Mcclellan's presentation. So I will stop sharing, and Tom, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, thanks, Emily. If you want to give control to Courtney Lyle to share the screen, I'm gonna let Courtney advance the slides during my part of the presentation here. So, hey, well, it looks like, can everybody see the screen and also hear my voice?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Just making sure. So thank you again, everybody. Good morning. 2 brief announcements before I get into the program here. And in the chat function of the meeting, if Courtney could put her email address, we do have the monthly newsletter that goes out every month detailing some of our higher priority design projects. And also we kind of rebranded it to include a lot of the local projects as well. So just a reminder, if you don't get that newsletter emailed to your inbox, please provide, you can look at Courtney's email and then send her an email after the meeting, and we'll make sure you get future updates. Second thing I'd like to cover real quick is we filled my design services portfolio manager position in the district office, and Ron Johnson is on the Zoom call with us today. So we welcome Ron. Ron will be taking over my older duties, which would be kind of reporting at this meeting on our projects. So Ron's with us today. He's been with Penndot since 2008. He's worked in our design unit and also most recently in our maintenance unit, doing a different projects in both those. So we welcome Ron. So I thought I'd shake it up a little bit today and just go over, we do a lot of talking about our design projects at this meeting, but I just wanted to share with you our construction projects for this summer. So this is our program for 2021, and it includes, want to show you where the tip dollars are going for the region. Over the entire Northwest Pennsylvania, we've let 3 projects to date, totaling just over 9 million, with a big one being an I-80 pavement project down in Venango County. And I know Kevin gave a good overview on the funding and some of the difficulties we're under right now. So our totals could change by the end of the year, but projected right now, we're looking at letting 64 additional projects through the 6-county area of Northwest Pennsylvania, totaling somewhere in the neighborhood. And I want to put a range on this because, again, we're a little uncertain. It's 130 to 150 million, depending on where everything shakes out. So go ahead. Again, to date, we had those 3 projects, and then what we have left to be advertised, kind of a breakdown or a flavor of what we have in it. The numbers you see in red in the parentheses, those are the ones that are in Erie County for the remainder of the year. There's just a picture of the roundabout, and we'll get into Erie County here real quick. So the first one I just want to share with you again, it's a paving project. It's going to start up in Northeast, right at the intersection of 20 and 89. Head north on 89 to the blinker light on Route 5, and then head west on Route 5 over to near the city-county line. It's 10 miles on Route 5, so it's basically a resurfacing job. We use a lot of fancy acronyms here at Penndot. That's CIPR, that's cold in place recycled pavement. Basically, we mill up the pavement and put it right back down. ADA, that's Americans with Disabilities Act, as far as curb ramps like in the borough of Northeast that we'll be fixing. And so we're looking at letting this project here shortly, and then have this paving done this summer. Okay, next slide. Central Bayfront, as far as moving the railroad CSX out of the State Street corridor and underneath State Street, we're relocating the CSX's rail yard over in the area of Soldiers and Sailors Home on the east side of Erie. If you're familiar, there used to be a bridge there, I guess, that was torn down in the mid to late 1980s. And in discussions with CSX right now on the final piece of getting the property to do this. The whole plan is done. It includes a bridge that can be used for vehicles and also pedestrians. We're eliminating an at-grade crossing that went to the cemetery. That's I know it's very hard to see on your map, but that's the pink that goes directly from the Soldiers and Sailors Home to the cemetery. So we're eliminating that because of it, be a safety issue, and putting a bridge back in that spot. Again, we're spreading the money around the county. Here's Waterford, and I know it's only 1,100 feet of pavement. It's one of those local federal aid route projects that we do. So some pavement going on for Waterford. Get that done this summer. Okay, next one. Next is a group paving project. Actually starts down in Crawford County on Route 98, and it runs up into Fairview Township. So it's quite a long haul actually, because it's 10 miles in Crawford and 8 miles in Erie. 98 parallels 79. Some work in downtown Erie, local federal aid route again around the courthouse, around the square there on 6th Street. And also the part on that's highlighted in the bottom on the bottom of that slide, that's Raspberry to the south between 12th and 18th Street. Big project for us out on the eastern side of the county is I-86, or I'm sorry, I-90 near I-86 to the New York state line. It's about 11 miles of paving out there, both directions. And, a tip of the hat to our design team here. A lot of other engineering districts at Penndot would farm something like this out to a consultant community, and it would cost a lot more money. But, being a rural district, we still have a lot of workers from our area, and they do a really good job. And, with a job like this too, you have to coordinate not only with the municipalities, you also have to coordinate with another state and the New York Thruway. So there's some different layers that we have to go through with permitting and allowing to put work zone signs in the other states. So we did a lot of work on this one, and again, this is to hold this piece of roadway together till we can reconstruct it, kind of like we're doing out in the western side of Erie County now. So hopefully we'll get some good years out of this pavement, and be able to reconstruct this at a later date. City of Corey, looking at a bridge project on Route 6 on the east side of town. It's over Keppel's Run, right near the border of Warren County. This is right now it's listed as potential. This is our roundabout in Summit Township. We've talked about this at this meeting a few times. We had great working relationship with Summit on this one. Appreciate, working through the maintenance agreement. This will be our first 5-legged roundabout. And, it's going to solve a safety issue there that, we're working on finalizing the property acquisition process with the VOTEC school. We came to agreement and hope to have those final documents signed here at the end of the month here in February, I think, in the payment to the VOTEC school. So that's why this one's listed as potential. Just wasn't sure how that was going to run, but all good. Here's another potential. Again, this is on 6N. This is kind of an important one for us too, only because, we realize that people are going to be using detours out in this neck of the woods due to the work that's going on along I-90. So this is Route 6N, also known as 3006, and we'll be ordering a box culvert to replace this dual pipe setup that you see here. And then our department force will come in and do the work. A paving project on some pavement out in Erie and Mill Creek. This is on Route 20, right at the I-79 junction, right at the exit ramp there. It's milepost 178, but it's definitely in some need of repair in that area. 4 miles of paving, traffic signal work, curb ramps, sidewalk. So another big important project in 20,000 vehicles a day on this route, one of the heavily used roads in the county. Here's a safety project on the eastern side of the Bayfront that will start, later this year. Might be more toward fall, but a lot of times, in the past, PennDOT's done a lot with, moving vehicles, but really this project is really about moving pedestrians and cyclists. We're doing some things there to narrow the lanes out on the Bayfront and increase the median in the middle, which, give a little bit of a safe haven for pedestrians. We're working on the pedestrian signal, new signal timings, new pedestrian timings due to the length that they're crossing, trying to make it safer for pedestrians. And it doesn't matter, what time of year you go up there, even if it's non-summer, if it's winter. You got East Middle School in that area. So there's a lot of pedestrians that cross the Bayfront. So we want to make that a lot safer. Project we're working on with the city, West 8th Street corridor. I think there was just a the Mayor of Erie had a press conference here within the last week or so on this. This is again a sidewalk ADA, again more geared toward pedestrians. PennDOT Connects is something we definitely believe in. We're going in and working with local municipalities to try to figure out what their plans are and try to incorporate them at times into our projects. Now, we don't have the money and we can't always do everything we want to do. But, at least if we talk about it and we also figure out a way that, if we know a municipality is going to be doing a sewer work or something in an area, we're not going to pave a road and then have it tore up the next year. It's all about planning and working together, the coordinating and communicating with each other. Here's another safety improvement, again on 12th Street. Once the bayfront becomes construction on the bayfront, it's 23 traffic signals. I believe a lot of them will be replacements. A few of them have been replaced in the recent years, and they'll just be retimed. Also, we'll be installing message boards to alert motorists heading into the city on I-79 and also the Bayfront connector. And those message boards will be in front of 26th Street and also on the east side of Broad Street or Route 20 as well, just so, again, to give real time to the motorists to try to give them the best path to get into the city and also real weather conditions too. Down in the southern part of the county, Waterford Township, we finally, were able to get the funding put together for this project here. This is Neymar Road, the covered bridge. It was historic. And it's also over mussel waters, threatened and endangered species that our environmental staff works with. So again, this is rehabbing this bridge and getting it back into shape. That's probably been closed for a good 5 to 10 years now. So that's a unique project. Another bike ped trail project that we hope to get out late in the year. Might not see any work this year, might be more toward 2022, but at least we're trying to let this one, and it's a bike and ped trail just north of Edinburgh along the lake along Route 99. Also on Route 99 up near the 7990 interchange is a bridge in Summit Township. Again, a lot of the work probably be done in 2022, but we're trying to get this one out the door at the end of the year. It's replacement of that bridge that crosses I-90 right near the Veterans Cemetery with the airplane that you see, that overhead crossing there. That's the bridge we're talking about if you're familiar with the area. Again, last but not least is Zook Road in Mill Creek. Again, this probably won't go till late this year or early next year, but it's the project to connect the whole way from down where Interchange Road from one country fair to the country fair at the north up by Route 20 in our PennDOT maintenance facility. Again, it's a little bit of everything. There's a bridge in there. There's some drainage work, traffic signal, guide rail. So a lot going on there as well. Just some other contracts to be aware of that that we work on every other year. I think the highway lighting is always a big deal, and the weather, and especially in Erie County, the winds and the ice and the snow, it takes a beating on the equipment. So we have an on-call contract that we use to make repairs to highway lighting. So that's one of the ways we take care of things that are put out there. Same thing with the weather, with pavement markings along the interstates, and also the reflectors you see in the middle of the road, the yellow and white ones that you see that help kind of designate those lanes on those dark rainy nights or when you get snow. We have a contract that goes in and replaces them. And last but not least, I think our district-wide drilling contract, that's the one we use to design for our design processes to figure out, how to make foundations. We get soil samples or pavement samples, helps us with our pavement designs for, what kind of pavement we want to put on our roadway, and also, what foundation's going to sit well with the soils and everything up in Erie County. We get a lot of, from the glaciers that came through, a lot of our our soil conditions are different than other parts of the state. So this is a very important contract to do those below the surface investigations to make sure we get the right foundations for our walls and our bridges. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our guide rail contract too. It's called Venango County Safety Improvement. Really, it's a guide rail contract that does a lot on all the interstates, and the standards for guide rail change a lot over the years. You know, if you remember in the 80s, Vince and Neil, the crash test dummies that we used to see, they crash test guide rail all the time. And with SUVs and different vehicles becoming popular at different times, you know, the way those vehicles hit the guide rail at different speeds and different angles, they test all that stuff and figure out, you know, what's the best and safest system out there. I remember when I started at PennDOT, that's when we started putting wood blocks kind of behind the guide rail to kind of lessen the blow or impact on a vehicle. And there's always different end treatments and technologies that take place. So having this contract will put us, you know, make these repairs to make us, you know, in agreement with our latest standards and also around the state. So I know that was probably quite a lot there, but went over a lot of things going on. You know, I didn't mention some of our carryovers from last year, like Union City Borough. We have the 3 traffic lights. That project's starting up here in the spring as well to replace the 3 traffic signals in Union City. And there's probably some other couple carryover projects, like, you know, out on I-90 in the western side of the county. You know, that's also in there. So, like I said, I just wanted to give everybody a flavor of where the tip money goes and, you know, some of those projects. So be happy to answer any questions at this time or anything else. No questions. I put everybody to sleep. No.
Excellent presentation, Tom. I know one of the best that I've seen for a while. So thank you.
You're welcome.
If there are no other questions for Tom, we'll move forward.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the presentation by WRA for the Active Erie Transportation Plan. So Jeff Ringer is with us from WRA. You should be able to share your screen, Jeff. If not, I have the presentation here as well.
Great, thank you, Emily. Is everyone able to hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Sometimes technology actually works. It's kind of nice. So I will pull up the presentation and share my screen now. My name is Jeff Rigner. As Emily mentioned, I work for WRA, the consultant who worked with the MPO and the city on the Active Erie Transportation Plan. Tom, you provided a great introduction in talking about active transportation, walking and biking as being a more significant share of investment in our transportation systems. The purpose of this plan is specifically to do that, to understand what the future conditions should be for walking and bicycling in the city of Erie. As you can imagine, this is a fairly in-depth planning process and set of recommendations. So I will go through it relatively briefly today, and I'm happy to answer any questions about things that I did not cover in great detail. So you can find more information about the plan at activeerie.com. As I mentioned, it's designed to create a blueprint for better walking and bicycling conditions in the city. Today's presentation really is going to focus primarily on the plan's recommendations and its implementation steps, but I will briefly mention process. We spent about a year in development of this plan. It was a very interesting year to develop a plan. We started out with some public information sessions to gain information on issues that should be addressed for walking and bicycling in the city. We were in the process for gearing up for a fairly intensive in-person outreach program to occur in conjunction with festivals and other activities happening in the spring and summer in Erie. That, of course, did not happen in 2020 with respect to the pandemic. So we pivoted to a series of online opportunities for input, as well as a survey that we got well over 300 responses to, which was very helpful in establishing our priorities. We then did have an opportunity for some in-person public engagement. A bike tour, a mobile workshop in October. Everything was outside and distanced. Everyone wore masks, and we had an opportunity to ride about 15 miles across the city on routes that are recommended as bikeways that you'll see in just a moment. We met with 6 different neighborhoods and had an opportunity to hear their thoughts about our approach. In addition, that was streamed live. There were over 2,000 people that participated at some point during the course of that day to hear from the mayor and others about what was going on. So it was a very, I think, a very engaging opportunity given the circumstances that we were in. So this whole process brought us to specific recommendations and then steps to implement those. The recommendations are really broken into 3 pieces: bicycling, walking, and then a broad range of policies and procedures that I'll share with you. We'll start with bicycling first. The idea is that the foundation of the bicycle network in Erie would be a grid of bikeways that run east, west, and north, south across the city. The idea was for this to be aspirational in that it really does reach every corner of the city. Pretty much all residents are within about a quarter mile or so of one of these bikeways. So it's a really good opportunity to connect all Erie residents to the network. But it is realistic in that it relies largely on existing low stress roads, or roads that have relatively low motor vehicle speeds and volumes. So there are 3 different types of improvements that you'll see in the map on the next slide when I get to that. The green color is bikeways along existing low stress streets. So most of the improvements associated with that would be signs and pavement markings, allowing you to get a mile of bikeway for a very low budget. There would need to be traffic controls at significant crossings of major streets. We experienced that as part of our ride in October. There would, though, be some elements of the network that require more significant construction, that would require moving curbs or otherwise modifying the physical structure of the pavement, simply because there isn't enough room for all of the elements to be able to fit. I'll mention a couple of those in a moment. And then finally, there would be local connections, which are ways to get from the grid to local destinations, shopping areas, schools, community centers, and the like. This is not designed to be the be-all, end-all of bike facilities in Erie. Rather, this is the primary network, and any projects that occur in the city, and Tom mentioned a couple of them during his presentation, would be required to look at bicycle facilities as well as pedestrian facilities in those areas as well. So this is the grid. Hopefully you're able to see well enough to be able to get the general idea. Again, the whole report is available at activeerie.com if you'd like to delve into it in much more detail. And you can see most of the grid for really 5 east-west routes and 7 north-south routes. It consists of that green or teal color, which is primarily signs and pavement markings. There are certainly corridors that require more construction. The primary ones are going to be East 6th Street and East Lake Road, which is not wide enough to accommodate a bike lane in most areas. There are some areas that are. 38th Street, as you might imagine, was actually the most commented route that was mentioned during our survey. It is probably the hardest to implement, as all of you are aware. And there's some initial consideration that's being given now by the MPO in the city to see what can be done there. And our north-south routes, a portion of Green Garden is maybe wide enough to accommodate bike lanes, maybe not. So we've been conservative to show that in pink. French Street, at least as far south as 26th, and potentially as far south as 38th, would include a two-way separated bike lane, the first in this part of the state. And there's also a connection that was identified as part of the East Bayfront study that Tom mentioned, along Broad Street that would connect under the Bayfront connector. There are also improvements recommended to State Street as part of this. The Downtown Streetscape Master Plan included these types of improvements, an idea of which is shown on your screen now. This would not create a truly low stress route according to the book, but it provides access to so many important destinations along State Street that we feel it's important to include this type of improvement anyway. And so folks who don't feel comfortable riding in shared traffic like this, with bike lanes immediately adjacent to parking, could potentially park their bike along the low stress route on French Street and walk over a block to State. In terms of sidewalks, Erie has a fairly complete sidewalk network. There are exceptions, and all of those are noted in the plan based on a citywide inventory that was conducted, as well as input from the public. So the key thing here is to figure out a program for addressing those sidewalk gaps. It's going to potentially take many years, and it's important to invest some money each year to make sure that that occurs. So there are two things that are recommended. One is to evaluate sidewalk repair requirements. We did not explicitly look at sidewalk condition. As part of this, we looked at the presence or absence of sidewalks. But we certainly heard from a lot of people that sidewalk condition is a big issue. Erie certainly has at least as significant freeze-thaw cycles as any place in Pennsylvania. That becomes an issue for heaving sidewalks or degrading the surface condition of the sidewalks. So the big thing that we want to look at is whether it's reasonable for property owners to continue to maintain those sidewalks, especially in areas that have significant disinvestment. We also recommend creating an annual capital program to fill in those sidewalk gaps and actually to address other transportation investments in the city. The third category of recommendations is policies, procedures, and programs. So this group obviously knows that these are not the fancy things that you can cut ribbons on, but they're the way that government agencies get things done. So we made a number of recommendations in this category. I'm not going to go through 2 slides worth, but I do want to mention a few that are critically important. In addition to adoption of the plan, which did occur last Wednesday from Erie City Council, we recommend the adoption of a complete streets policy, which means in general that any action that takes place on a street needs to consider all users and all modes of transportation. So that is capital projects that are advanced by the city or Penndot or a combination of the two, as well as development projects that occur in the city. That's really critical to making sure that every action that takes place on a city street benefits all modes of travel. I mentioned that we recommend a 5-year CIP for the city. That's the way most cities are able to translate plans like this into actual built reality. I did mention briefly the idea of level of traffic stress. We want to make sure that bicycle facilities in the city are designed for a typical adult bicyclist. So not someone who's necessarily a regular bicycle commuter. And by the same token, in most places, probably not streets that are fully designed for separation for small children, but rather to find that middle ground to make sure that streets work for almost everybody. And then there are a number of other specific recommendations as well. So how does all this happen? Well, the plan includes an implementation schedule with the idea that this be something that is not sitting on a shelf, but actually turns into built projects. We've shown action starting as early this year with the Complete Streets policy. And we recommend that physical construction would start along an existing low-stress street, so one of those green recommendations in the map that has two key characteristics. One of them is that it's relatively easy to implement, and the second is that it's developed in close consultation with the community. A citywide plan like this, by its very nature, can't directly involve every affected neighborhood, although with our bike tour and survey, we did our best to do just that. Our suggestion is that the city advance something in a community that is excited and engaged about moving this forward, and ideally a community that has traditionally not gotten the same level of investment. It appears that the 19th Street corridor, east-west across the center of the city, may be a good candidate for this, because organizations that serve the community, like the Sisters of St. Joseph, have been actively engaged in the development of this plan, and there does seem to be fairly strong community support. So the plan is structured to allow for completion of the network, obviously depending on funding, within a roughly 10 to 12 year timeframe. So I'm happy to answer any questions that meeting participants might have.
Okay, very good report, Jeff.
Great.
Any questions for Jeff? Okay, hearing none. Emily?
I'd like to point out that Tom's presentation and Jeff's presentation both talked about West 6th Street in the city of Erie. So hopefully, as that local federal aid route on West 6th Street is repaved, there can be some conversations about striping for bike lanes in that area in conjunction with the active transportation plan. So I think that would be a great place to start conversations with Penndot and this plan. All right, I will move back into our agenda. The only thing I had was a funding opportunity for the Act 13 program. For those bridges that are under the 21 feet, so 8 to 20 is that range, we have the Erie County Act 13 program. So Erie County will reimburse up to 60% of those project costs, up to $250,000. So if any municipalities own small bridges, that's the program that would suit those projects best. But that is all I had. If anyone else would like to share anything else, any other business that you would like to bring forth to the MPO, you can do that now.
Anyone with any questions or for the good of the cause comments?
Hey, Mayor, it's Brian McNulty. I apologize, I couldn't hear everything that you said, Emily, but I think you touched on the 6th Street local federal aid route paving, which I'm saying local federal aid route. I think that's what it is. If Tom, could you confirm that? That's not, yeah.
Yeah, it's 8th Street, I guess, 8th.
Oh, 8th. I thought you mentioned 6th around the in your presentation as well. Is that not true?
Yeah. The one local federal aid route was the Raspberry one. It did pave right around the courthouse, or
Yeah.
right in the Perry Square. Sorry, Perry Square.
Yeah. So Emily, if I did hear your comment correctly, just wanted to clarify for the group, that's a city street. So that'd be a question to John, maybe if they're doing anything consistent with the active transportation plan there.
Hey, and if I can speak to the federal aid route project on 6th Street, that is not by the courthouse. That's That's out in Gridley Park, not Perry Square.
Okay,
It goes from Raspberry to Poplar.
okay.
So it's west of the courthouse.
West of the courthouse then on, yeah.
Okay, thanks, John. And then, so is there any out where it actually is then out by Gridley Park? Is there, I didn't catch if that was something that's in the active transportation plan, anything, needed to be incorporated in that paving project or not?
There is a bike lane out there, but it's all just striping.
Okay. And then the other question on a related note is I looked at the active transportation plan and maybe there's been conversations with PennDOT and I just haven't been involved in them, but there's a couple of those bike projects on the tip, which is Green Garden and French Street. I mean, are those more or less, sounds like those are probably consistent with the active plan, and is there a status on those projects, John?
Leanne, are you still on?
Yeah, we don't have, we haven't started the French Street project yet.
Okay. I think the construction funds are in 2022, and I know we just hadn't talked about them for a while, so I was just curious if either of those has Green Garden started or is it not yet?
No.
Okay. Just checking in. Thanks. That's all I had.
All right, anything else? Any other comments on the two presentations or any other agenda items? All right, if not, we can have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Bill Kuhn, yes.
Okay, Bill makes a motion. Do we have a second?
Brian McNulty, second.
Okay, I would like to thank everybody for their time and service. Everyone who wants to adjourn, say aye.
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 Have a good day, folks. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, PennDOT, for keeping us moving, okay? We
Our
appreciate
pleasure.
your hard work.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. Difficulty today.